Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today we are talking about the aims and results of policies, domestic economic policies. Just as a refresher, aims is the overall goal of the policy. What do they want to achieve? Results, what was the actual outcome? What was the consequences? Or what was the lasting effect? Domestic means it exists within or inside of the country. It has to do with the people and the populations. We're not talking about the way they interact with other people. We're not talking about the way they engage with other countries. It's all about within the country itself. And today, everything we're talking about is economics. Now, the thing I do want to point out very explicitly, as you remember, we're supposed to compare this to Hitler. So one of the biggest things you're going to notice is that between Mao and Hitler, their aims and results of policies are very, very different, because both of these leaders aren't trying to achieve the same goal. Hitler, for instance, is trying to lead and get everything ready for a war. Mao is not. So a lot of the policies we're going to go over today and the comparisons you're going to need to be looking for the deeper commonalities rather than the surface of like, oh, well, they both wanted to make their country better. You need to be able to dig deeper into that. So let's begin. Today we're talking about two examples, the Great Leap Forward and the Four Pest Campaign. Both of these are actually related to each other. The Four Pest Campaign is a part of the Great Leap Forward, but needs to be separated so that you can see a little bit of a deeper aspect of the outcome and the lasting issues that we see in Mao's China. So, what is the Great Leap Forward? Well, as we remember, Mao feels that China is not industrialized. And he is correct, right? 80% of the population is in agricultural poverty. So he feels that the best thing that he needs to bring for his country is industrialization. And what he wants to do is he wants to lead an industrial revolution. But even though the actual industrial revolution took place over the course of 200 years, give or take depending on where you're focusing, Mao wants to do it in 5. He wants to condense all of that down to 5 years. Specifically from 1958 to 1962. He also, or you can also call this the second 5-year plan, or the Great Leap Forward. It's more typically known as the Great Leap Forward. And the way he wanted to achieve jumping ahead in history and jumping ahead in time to industrialize China was he encouraged people to go out there and start pushing themselves. Push yourselves to grow more. Build a furnace in the back of your house. Start learning how to melt iron. Start learning how to incorporate new technologies. And he started really pushing people to start doing everything that they can do in every facet. So it wasn't just grow as much food as possible. It was also, when you're growing food, also learn how to melt iron ore. Learn how to melt and combine ore in order to make other ingredients like tin, making copper, making a lot of different mixed metals. So the way he pushes these people is propaganda. He starts shoving as much propaganda down as possible. And then he also knows and realizes a part of the reason why a lot of development isn't occurring in China is because China is such a huge country. So instead, what he decides to do is implement a policy called collectivization. Now, what he is asking and what he's doing is he's getting the Red Army to go out across China and start forcing peasants and forcing people out from the land that he gave them and re-centralizing them into major popular growing areas. He wants to push everyone to go to this little area. And now that we have a centralized workforce in all across China, now we can really use the land. Now we can really start growing. Now we can really start pushing to industrialize. And this policy was huge. Everyone loved it because it was motivational. Let's outdo the West and industrialize as fast as possible. So many people were so motivated to do this that At certain parts in China, the skies at night, at the darkest of night, would glow red from the iron and the heat and the liquid metal that they were trying to produce. Now, were they effective at this? Yeah, if the process was learning how to melt metal, pouring it into a shape, and then figuring out what to do with it. But that was kind of it. Mao didn't really have any idea of what we're going to be doing with that metal, what we're going to be, how we're going to be affecting these things and selling them. So when he tried to sell this metal, no one would buy it because it was not good quality. Because the melting process and the smelting process isn't just heat plus ore equals metal. It's a lot more complicated than that. Plus, his process of collectivization had very dire consequences. There was a massive famine. Because what ends up happening is, as Mao moves all these little villages across the way, he is disrupting what is called food lines. So, food lines naturally develop in a country because of how we can send food down certain villages, down certain areas for them to eat and grow and exist. So a great example of this is take a look at the Rio Grande Valley, right? Eliminate Mexico and eliminate North Texas. If you were just to go from the Rio Grande Valley, from Laredo to Corpus to Brownsville to like McAllen, right? Food lines is where food would come in from Brownsville and then follow all the way up to Corpus, follow all the way across to McAllen, and then up to Laredo. As it's going up to Corpus and going over to Laredo, food is being sold to Harlingen, Laferia, Weslaco, Donna, Mercedes, Alamo, Far, San Juan. Food is being spread out all throughout that area. That is a food line. And so by moving these cities, by essentially saying, all right, Harlingen to Far, you're being moved all the way to Wisconsin. So now, when that food is coming up from Brownsville, there's not a lot of people that it's going to meet this way. So rather than doing that, they're just going to send food up to Corpus and then send it over. Thus, depriving Las Milpas, thus depriving San Juan, Alamo, citizens of McAllen. All of these people are starting to now have to find food from other areas. Now take that and multiply it across the entire country of the United States and Mexico. These food lines get destroyed. And so loads of people are starving to death. And if you weren't starving to death, or if you criticized the Great Leap Forward, you were sent to the Laogai. You were sent to a camp. You were re-educated on what true communism was and why your criticism is preventing China from industrializing. But if you didn't go to the Laogai and you were able to try to find some food, you were the lucky few. Because the death toll of the Great Leap Forward is between 15 and 55 million people starving to death or being executed. You're part of the massive lots of people who just truly suffered, sometimes in silence, sometimes on the side of the road in very obvious ways. In fact, this newspaper cartoon is very indicative of how the rest of the world knew what was happening, yet it still happened. No one came to help them. And when people started to die, when the Great Famine started, Mao left. Mao was like, hey, we're going to do this Great Leap Forward. Everyone get to it. I'm out. And because he left, when people started dying, and Mao came back towards the end of the Great Leap Forward to be like, all these people are dying. Why are these people dying? It's not because of me. He blames these two gentlemen, Deng Xiaoping and Liu Shaoqi. He blames them and puts all the focus onto them and not him, thus keeping his cult status, thus keeping his, like, yes, Mao's doing the best that he possibly can, while pushing it onto these two individuals, which is incredibly ridiculous because these two individuals were the ones who put a stop to the famine. These two individuals were the ones who saved millions more in China. In fact, these two individuals decided, we're going to end the collectivization, we're going to end all these things, we're going to relocate people back to where they were because this is not working. And this impact was huge, but still giving Mao more power. Now, the impact of the Great Leap Forward is the fact that millions died and this program failed utterly, but still kept Mao in power. Now, there's another reason why the Great Leap Forward failed, and it wasn't just because of the Laogai and the collectivization, but it has to deal more with the Great Famine. A big reason why the Great Famine failed is because one part of the Great Leap Forward was the Four Pest Campaign. The Four Pest Campaign was Mao trying to push for a more hygienic country by eliminating the four pests that he sees exist in China: the sparrows, the rats, the flies, and the mosquitoes. Now, what he wants to do is, as you can see on this propaganda photo, eliminate them. He wants to kill them off. And so this is very easy and very simple for the Chinese people to follow. All right, we need to kill them off. Let's go about, let's start killing birds wherever we find them, killing rats, hanging them, squishing flies and drying up lakes, and working in all these different ways to eliminate these four pests. And what's interesting about the Four Pest Campaign is that it was effective. They did very successfully eradicate, or almost push to the extinction, rats and sparrows in China. However, this is the sparrow that you can see here. As the sparrow, more specifically the sparrow, was pushed towards extinction, what Mao didn't account for was, by eliminating the sparrows, yes, it's helping hygienic properties in China. Yes, it's helping save any sort of grain that they may eat from the ground or from the crops. But what he's not paying attention to is that when the sparrows are eating grains, when the sparrow is eating from the ground, so things like that, it's eating locusts, a type of bug that just consumes without end any sort of wheat crops that you can grow, or soy crops. And so, because the sparrows were not there in a large enough population to eliminate the locusts, when the locusts came through, the crops that they were able to grow, over 50% of them failed. Failed because the locusts came and destroyed and ate all of the seed, destroyed and ate all of the production of it. And eventually, because of how bad it was, they had to import birds to stop this now new plague of locusts, whom are eating the entire crop. So even though the aim of this policy was to eliminate the sparrows, the mosquitoes, the rats, and the flies, they did it so well that they destroyed the natural ecosystem of China, causing more death. So the reason why the death toll was 15 to 55 is because we're not 100% sure, historians and record keepers, on who to equate the death to. Is it the Great Leap Forward? Is it the lasting effects of the Four Pest Campaign? Is it the executions that Mao did? What's really complicated is that no matter the way we look at it, we're still looking at the result of 15 to 55 million people dead, mass starvation, and a complete destruction of the Chinese ecosystem, to the point where they need to start importing the pests that they try to exterminate.